Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another deck profile. So this time it's going to be a Danger World Duel Golem deck. So Duel Golem's got some new support as of late, and the deck is usually an OTK kind of a deck, so some of the new cards in it can help with the OTK combos, and they're just some generally good support cards. As the buddy, I'm going to be running just a piece of the engine. So I'm running Iron-Legs Casu-gollum. What this card does is I can pay a gauge and put one Duel Golem item from my deck to my hand. So that's all we really care about it, because the item we are searching is the burn item, and it just helps with the OTK or FTK setup. We are running 4 of the buddy as a result. We just really need to see our item, and the fact that he can search out the item in case we don't see it is very helpful. Next, we run 4 copies of CHAOS Spikey-gollum. This card is one of the best cards for the FTK setup because he has a natural 5 crit. Usually, from what I found, the deck can FTK or OTK as long as you have at least a monster with 4 crit. So him having 5 crit just makes the FTK a lot easier. So we run 4 of him. Next we run 3 copies of Lastdroid Dra-gollum. This is a pretty good card. You put the top card of your deck into its soul and pay 2 gauge, then all monsters on your field can't be rested by opponent's card effects. If you don't manage to get your FTK, he just helps with keeping your board to be as uninteractable as possible. Then he has an overkill ability. You can pay 1 gauge during your main phase. For this turn, when a Duel Golem is on your field attacks, you can destroy a card on your opponent's field and deal 1 damage to them. So he just also helps with some burn damage when your Duel Golems attack. Next, we run 3 copies of Demonic Rock Mech Trooper Dra-gollum. This is a really good card for the deck in general. He has 3 crit, but with his ability he actually has 4 crit, so he can help with the FTK setup. His gauge cost is pretty low at just paying 1 gauge, no other requirement, and he has a passive ability of all Duel Golems on your field get +1 crit. He's really important for not only being a part of an FTK, but helping an FTK setup. Then, on top of that, he has his own overkill ability. Pay 1 gauge during your main phase. For this turn, all cards on your field get +2 crit. That's really good because with him out and Spikey-gollum, you just overkill and Spikey-gollum can deal 8 damage off of his crit, which is actually kind of insane. So he's really important. I'm almost thinking about bumping him up to 4, but I've just felt like 3 is fine. Next, we run 2 copies of Mercenary Dra-gollum. So this is the newest Duel Golem, and he has a call cost of put a card from your drop zone into its soul and pay 1 gauge. Then, just like other Dra-golems, all Duel Golems on your field get +1 crit. And then when a Duel Golem on your field is destroyed, you gain 2 life. Then you draw a card and stand this card. So he's really good because he gains you some life, he can stand himself up, and he has move, penetrate, soul guard, and he has 3 crit, which is actually 4 crit with his passive effect, so he can help OTK. Next, we run 2 copies of Explo-gollum. So he's a pretty good Duel Golem. He's a size 0, so most of the time we're going to have a size 2, size 1, and a size 0 is the ideal formation. And because Duel Golems like to kill themselves off, the item can attack through the center if it needs to by sacrificing the golem in front of it to its own effect. But when this card attacks, you can put a soul from a card on your opponent's field into the drop zone, and at the end of battle that this card attacked, you may pay 1 gauge if you don't destroy the card. So that's like the condition on all Duel Golems, is if you just can't pay the gauge, you just destroy them, which most of the time you're going to want them to be destroyed anyway. But what's important about this card is dropping the soul, so it's mostly a tech card. Next, we run Raiding Fal-gollum. When it attacks, destroy an item on your opponent's field. That's really all we care about. It's another size 0, and then it has the Duel Golem effect of, like, if you don't pay the gauge, destroy it. So most of the time you're going to want to have your size 0 in your center, because Sometimes the Dra-golems have move, so you don't want to call them into your center. So you would have a Dra-golem on your left or right, you'd have a size 1 on your left or right, and then you'd probably want your size 0 in your center, so that way you can attack with it, do its tech effect, and then destroy it, and then attack with your item. A lot of these tech cards we're just going to run 2 of. Next, we are running 2 copies of Fighting Soldier Brutal. He's pretty good because he's a size 1 with 4 crit, which helps with the FTK. And when this card attacks, choose another Adventure or Duel Golem on your field, and it gets +2 crit. At the end of battle, if you attacked, usual Duel Golem stuff, and then he's got Penetrate. He's more for if we don't FTK, he allows us to help deal a lot of damage, but most of the time we're just going to want to try to FTK, and he's got, again, 4 crit, so he can easily help us FTK. Next, we run 1 copy of Delusion Butterfly-gollum. This is an interesting one because it has a counteract ability. If a Duel Golem monster was destroyed during this turn, you can call this card from your hand. So most of the time, if you're not in FTK, it just gives you another attack to apply pressure. So we only run 1 of it though. Next, we run 1 copy of Steel-Beak Vul-gollum. So this is another tech card to try to get an extra attack in. During your turn, if this card is in the drop zone when a Duel Golem monster is on the field and is destroyed, you could call this card from your drop zone. So basically, it's like Delusion Butterfly, but from the drop zone. Now we go on to the spells. We run 2 copies of Demon Slay Dreadful Pressure. Duel Golems like to kill themselves, and this card just plays off of the fact that we want to kill our Duel Golems. It has a counter, so we could play it after they attacked, before the Duel Golem's destruction effect happens. We can destroy a monster on our field. If we do, we charge 1, gain 1 life, and draw 1 card. Next, we run 2 copies of Burst Deity Calling Ritual. So pay 1 gauge, pay 1 life, draw 1 card, and then if you have a weapon, you draw an additional card. So most of the time, we're going to have our weapon out, and we really want our weapon out. Most of the time when we cast this card, it's just going to be a draw 2. Next, we run 2 copies of Emergency Fuel Supply. Its counter: destroy a Duel Golem monster or item on your field. If you do, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your gauge. Then, if the destroyed card's critical was 4 or more, you gain 2 life. The gaining 2 life isn't so important. It's just most of the time you're going to want to use it to just gain the gauge, so that way you can safely FTK the opponent. Next, we run 2 copies of Giant Catapult. This is probably one of the best spells in the deck. It's a set spell, and what it does is all abilities of cards on your field can't be nullified by the opponent's card effects. It helps so that the opponent can't stop your plays, but what's more important is when a Duel Golem monster on your field is destroyed during your turn, deal 1 damage to your opponent. With the right setup, this just can immediately help kill the opponent because the Duel Golems will be destroying themselves on their own effect, so this will be dealing 1 damage, and like I said earlier with CHAOS Spikey-gollum dealing 5, and with Mech Trooper pumping it to 8, this will deal an additional 1, so we only need to deal 1 damage in order to FTK. But there's ways of getting that. Next, we run 2 copies of Ration Command. You pay 1 life, not a big deal, and you could choose one of the following 2. You could call a size 1 Duel Golem monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost, or for this turn, all Duel Golems on your field get plus 10,000 power. Most of the time, you're not really going to care about the 10,000 power unless you didn't get the FTK. And if you didn't get the FTK, calling a size 1 Duel Golem from your drop zone is most of the time what you're going to be using it for. It's also good with the FTK depending on how you spend your gauge and how you use your gauge, so it's still not bad. Next, we run 3 copies of Where the Souls Fuse. So you can only cast this card if you have a Duel Golem on your field. Put the top card of your deck into your gauge and put a Duel Golem monster or item from your drop zone to your hand. Again, it's more of a if you couldn't FTK the opponent, this is just a good backup plan card to keep the game progressing. Next, we run 3 copies of Immense Pressure. You can only cast this card if you have a card with 4 or more crit on your fields. That's not hard in Duel Golem because you just get one of the Dra-golems out and then it just immediately fulfills the condition, but it's just another draw 2 cards. It helps us see the cards that we need so that we can try to FTK, and if we don't, then we still have cards to play with after the attempt. Next, we run 3 copies of Ground Alpha. You can only cast this if you have a Duel Golem on your field. Draw a card and put any number of cards from the top of your deck into your gauge equal to the number of Duel Golem monsters on your field. Most of the time it's going to charge us 2, sometimes it'll charge us 3, but the important thing is it's just getting us gauge. Next, we run 3 copies of the item, Sandstorm Palm. So basically, you pay 3 gauge to equip it, or you could equip it for free if you have a Duel Golem out, but this also helps us with the FTK because of its ability. During your turn, when a Duel Golem monster on your field is destroyed, deal 1 damage to your opponent and put the top card of your deck into your gauge. One of the setups for the FTK is you have the item equipped, then you have the Catapult on the field. Ideally, you want Mech Trooper out and then CHAOS Spikey-gollum. So with Mech Trooper's Overturn ability, it'll put CHAOS Spikey-gollum to 8 critical. Then when he dies, the effects of the Catapult and your item will deal 2 damage. It's 10 damage in the first turn. And then on top of all that, we run 4 copies of the Impact. So you can only cast this card if you have no monster in your center and you have a Duel Golem on your field. You pay 2 gauge, deal 2 damage to your opponent, then you may pay 1 gauge. If you do, deal 2 more damage to the opponent. So this is kind of why gauge gaining is important, but like at the very worst, it's dealing 2 damage, which most of the time with some of our other setups is really good. So that's why we have a decent amount of gauge gaining, so we could just like play out our stuff, swing in with our big creature, and deal a whole bunch of damage, and then finish them off with Sandstorm Palm and the Impact. So the Impact most of the time will deal 4 damage, and then we inherently just need to have a Duel Golem with natural 4 crit, so that way when we play Dra-gollum, it'll get 5 crit, so 9 damage, then Palm will deal 10. There's just a couple of different ways the deck can FTK, but if you don't really feel like playing the FTK, I have a couple of different options for you that don't really fit into the FTK strategy, but like fit into more of like, hey, I'm just going to naturally play the game kind of strategy. You could play Sturdy Horn Beetle Golem. This is a good card because, especially right now, because it can eat away at the opponent's gauge when it attacks. You could play Demonic Rock Dragon Mech Dole Dra-gollum. It's another Dra-gollum. It has the ability of all Duel Golems get something, and this something is Penetrate. And then it has Overkill. You could pay a gauge, and for this turn, this card gets +4 crit, and its attack can't be nullified when attacking alone. This card can also help with the FTK or AFTK setup, so that way you could just use its Overturn or Overkill ability and swing for 8 crit. You could also run Demonic Rock Mech General Dra-gollum, put it on top of a Duel Golem monster on your field and pay 2 gauge. It has the effect where if a Duel Golem item is equipped, this card gets +1 crit, and then most of the time you just use it for its counter ability to call it from your hand by paying its call cost. The idea is to attack with a Duel Golem, then use his ability, call him over it before the Duel Golem is able to kill itself. And then it's got Move, Penetrate, Triple Attack, and Soul Guard. So he's just a pretty beefy guy. If you want, you could run the other item. It has the same condition to equip where it's either pay 3 gauge or it's free if you have a Duel Golem out. But during your turn, when a Duel Golem monster is destroyed, you draw a card. So instead of burning the opponent for 1, you just draw a card. So it's good for the later, like the games that are going longer, and if you're not planning on playing the FTK. You could also run Demon Slay Battle Aura Bind. Because your items will also get the buffs from Dra-gollum, they'll usually have a pretty high crit. For 1 life, you could rest an opponent's card that has crit less than or equal to the crit of your item. Most of the time your item's going to have like 4 crit, and even if it doesn't, 3 crit's still pretty good to rest almost anything. You could also run Fang Dragon Declaration. This is just the Danger World spell null. You could also run Battle Aura Rampage. So if you really feel like you are not gaining enough gauge consistently enough, Battle Aura Rampage can basically gain you any amount of gauge you feel like you would need. And it does so by paying as much life as you like, and then translating that life into gauge. Then, if you want, you could run Buddy Block. It's just a defense spell. It's a really good defense spell. And then you could run Loyalty. Most of the time, you just use it to stop your opponent from calling past their third monster. Duel Golems is pretty fun. I really like the FTK build, and there's a couple of different ways you could build the FTK build. And the idea is just super boost the crit of one of your Duel Golems to probably like 5 or 6, and then like it's pretty consistent on dealing the rest through the impact, through burn damage. That is my take on Danger World Duel Golem FTK. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you like and subscribe for more deck profiles, and I will see you in the next video.